Good evening and welcome to Squirm Night, a 2018 election forum brought to you by Grassroots TV, Aspen Public Radio, Aspen Daily News, and the Aspen Times. I am Curtis Wackerle, editor of the Aspen Daily News, along with Alycin, Bektesh, Aspen Public Radio News Director.
Tonight we're joined by two candidates running for the District 1 seat on the Pitkin County Board of County Commissioners, Rob Ittner and Patti Clapper. Patti's the incumbent who is running for her 5th term on the board since the late 1990s. Rob is a restaurant owner and operator who held the seat from 2011 to 2015. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Just going to get right to the questions. Rob, 4 years ago when you and Patti ran against each other, you lost by 13 points. What makes you think you can win now, and what has Patti done that you think would warrant the voters coming out in your favor to make up the deficit from last time?
I think, well, first of all, thank you for having us here. I think that right now the quality of life in this community has changed, and having someone involved from a business aspect is really important. Someone with an analytical mind to make problem solving really happen and move forward. I said that from the very beginning. I wish I had stayed on for another 4 years. I wish I was still county commissioner. I've been involved with the community. I didn't take time off. I've been involved with the community every night when I talk to people in my restaurant. You know, Patti talks about how a full-time job it is, and most of that full-time job is talking to people in the street. Most of that full-time job is being active in talking to people and knowing what the community brings. So I think my analytical thought process was an asset to the board. And I think the county commissioners that I served with during that time period vocally said that it was an asset to the board. So I look forward to serving again.
Well, Patti, when you were the challenger last time around, what did you see that compelled you to run? Do you agree with Rob's statements about his leadership style when he was a county commissioner?
Well, first of all, the 4 years I took off, it was actually very difficult to take those 4 years because of term limits with the county home rule charter. I needed to take that break. I hadn't decided if I was going to run again over those 4 years until it was getting closer to election time, and I rethought where I was in my life. It was a really good time for me to be off because I was back really at the grassroots of where people were trying to find jobs and housing, really, because in healthcare was the big issue because I was trying to find healthcare, and commuting because I was actually going to Basalt. I worked in the garden industry, which was heavy work, hard labor. It was good for me. It was good for my mind, my body, and my spirit. And so when I came back, I was bringing back a whole different sense of quality of life that I had, realized over that 4 years. What I think is the benefit for me being on the board is I have a mind that remembers a lot of detail, a lot of history. I'd sat on planning and zoning before I was a member of the Board of Commissioners, and I think staff in the community really values that. When we sit at meetings and I can say, well, remember 15 years ago when we did X, Y, and Z, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we remember that. Why did we make those decisions? I think that's a great quality to be bringing it to the board. And I'm on the street a lot. I'm at the grocery store a lot. I'm up and down Valley a lot because I have children and grandchildren now. And so I see people at all different points of contact within Pitkin County. And I think that's a huge asset to the board. Plus, I've been running the board meetings. I have a great style of bringing the public to the meetings, making them feel comfortable, and my ability to listen to the people. I serve the people. When they come to speak before the board, we need to be listening to what the people have to say. That's valuable, that's important, and that's part of our decision-making process.
We're going to get to some style questions later on in the evening. We do want to make sure we hit a lot of the issues that whoever wins the seat will be looking at in the future. One of those is the Crystal River Valley Trail. So this question is for both of you. Rob, we can start with you. Do you support a trail through the Crystal River Valley, and which alignment takes preference for you?
Well, I'll start by saying there's a lot of studies that need to be done still. Even Open Space and Trails have not set an alignment. There are problems with the riparian aspects of that river if you're crossing bridges back and forth. There's problems with the cost. They are already moving forward with the scenic byway of doing the upper part of the trail, so there's some of that that's already moving forward. I think there should be some studies done on what transportation is going to look like. These plans go out 15, 20 plus years. before there's actually going to be some brick and mortar built on that challenging part of the section. So there's a lot of process that needs to happen. So I'm in favor of some sort of trail up there. I'm more inclined to say, just as the Crystal River Caucus has said, that a road alignment makes a lot more sense at this point. But again, more information, analytical thought process is going to lead to a better decision.
Patti, let's talk about that Crystal River Caucus, who I think there's been reporting that they don't feel like they're at the table as much as they should be. So what's your thoughts on if you support a trail in that area, and who gets to have the input during this time?
Well, first of all, I need to be very careful because it's an issue before the Board of Commissioners. I don't want to breach ex parte conversation by talking about where the board is, and we have a resolution coming before the board on November the 7th at a special meeting that I asked to be held in Carbondale, so the people who live down there will be able to attend the meeting and have public comment again. So I really can't go through the details because I would be in violation, and I don't want to put myself in a legal quandary. So let me see what I can say very carefully. The board has not made any decisions yet. We have given direction to staff. Decisions will be made on the 7th. We have not done any brick and mortar. We have not started any trail process at this time. We have to have a resolution with 2 readings, and we have to have more public comment. There are a lot of studies that we are commissioning now. We've learned a lot through the process, and I can say this. There's a lot of issues we learned about the riparian, the river quality and quantity and alignments and wildlife, and so those aspects will be moving forward throughout the Crystal River Valley regardless of whether or not a trail is built, and that's critical for people to understand and know. And a lot of that was because we listened to the people there, and those were their concerns about their lifestyle and their habitat and what's around them, their surroundings. So those efforts are going to move forward. We're going to have more monitoring of violations of the existing trails that are there, because we have a lot of people who run their dogs off leash, who violate the wildlife closures, and so we're going to gear that up in conjunction with the Division of Parks and Wildlife, the CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and with White River National Forest. So we're doing some really positive things in light of all the controversy that's gone on in that conversation.
Because you can't speak too much to that, let me open it up to a more philosophical question then. Those in the Crystal River Valley Caucus aren't as crazy about a new trail being built as those everywhere else in the county. And this happens a lot. There's a lot of, well, if it's near me, it's harder to say yes to change, right? So as a county commissioner, how do you weigh the different factions within the county? When you hear that your constituents are pretty evenly divided on which way they want things to go, how do you make the call? That's
a very difficult position to be in. It's hard. I like the more information. I like the diversity of the conversation, because I think at the end of the day we make a better decision. It's going to be tough. There's a lot of people who've stopped coming forward who want the trail just because they were beating their heads against a very, very stern brick wall. So I think at the end of the day you will find, I think the public will find, that we have made a decision that honors and respects the position of those who are against a trail right now in certain aspects of the Crystal River Valley.
Rob, can I ask you the same question? When you served as county commissioner in the future, how would you take the opinions of a group who is most affected and weigh them against people who disagree with them, who still you represent?
Yeah, we have a very unique community of people that are a good group of people that are very actively involved and vocalize their voice. And it's very easy to make a decision based on that vocal voice. And you know, John Peacock said to me, we both hired pretty much at the same time. I was hired by the electorate back in 2010, and he was hired by the county commissioners. But he said to me that, you know, governing is really a balance of having that passion and that drive and having some sort of reason and analytical thought process. It really relates to the fact that, you know, that facts are the fundamentals of the truth, you know, that sort of stuff. And looking at those facts to make decisions and really understanding, you know, that someone doesn't want something in their backyard. I'll give you a perfect example. I live at Lasse Court. I live in employee housing. The Beaumont is right behind it. The hospital owns the Beaumont. They want to develop employee housing there at some point in the future. My window would be facing that employee housing. I'm a huge advocate of employee housing, but do I want my bedroom window to be blocked by that new employee housing? Absolutely not. So where do I find my balance of saying we need employee housing, but not in my backyard? And there are a lot of issues where people make a lot of noise by saying not in my backyard, but the county needs to govern in a way with rules and guidelines, the land use code, those sorts of things, and make decisions that are just and fair and not feel like, you know, that someone's going to bully them with various things.
You bring up housing. Next question is about housing. Rob, you have made a lack of affordable housing contributing to a diminished quality of life a central plank of your campaign. What would you propose the county do differently that it's not doing currently in the affordable housing realm?
You know, this relates to probably the most heartstringed issue within our community, which is this growth, no growth. And having data and reasonable thought to move forward on how everything affects quality of life. Quality of life is a term that I've been using through this campaign process. I think people throw it out for a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff underneath it. Healthcare, housing, all cost of living, the ability for businesses to survive that support employees, so the employees can survive, transportation, the RAFTA thing. But there are some things we need to get a little bit more aggressive with our employee housing. I mean, the competition that we have with down valley businesses for employees, the cost of free market housing and people being here. Being a business owner, I can tell you every restaurant in Aspen was underemployed by 2 or 3 people. I know the effects that my employees are making less, the business owners are making less, the quality of life is being disrupted by that. So this community has always made hard decisions or struggled with the hard decision of, do we want a little bit of growth? Do we want to support that? Do we not want to support that? I think the Board of County Commissioners has made some hard rules in the past about the urban growth boundary and where housing belongs. I think there is some opportunities, maybe the Phillips trailer park from development down the future to have a little bit more density for employee housing in a tasteful way.
Okay, Patti, can you tell me how you see the county's record on affordable housing, where that stands, and what else could be done?
I'm very proud to tell you what we've done in the last 4 years. We've done amazing things. We've not only been purchasing, buying down units that go up for sale on the free market, buying down and using those for Pitkin County employees or people who work in Pitkin County, depending upon the need and where they're located. We, of course, purchased the Phillips Trailer Court after like a year and a half or 2 years of negotiating with about 30 family members. I was really, really strong on keeping the board on track with that. I thought it was very important. It was the last, what you'd call manufactured housing community in the county, was out there that wasn't owned by the owners of the land. The people own their trailers, but they don't own the land. So we worked really hard. It was 76 acres. We bought it for $6.5 million. We're in the process now of looking at the septic system, the water quality, what we can do there for the people who live there now, and what we might be able to do in the future. We've got some great ideas. I'm attending a conference. I spoke at the conference last year on manufactured housing. I'm going back again in December. As a participant, not as a speaker this time, because there's great connections for helping us find funding partners to come in there and really improve the quality of life for people who live there. It's critical. And the county also is in the process of working with Habitat for Humanity, the Roaring Fork School District, and Pitkin County, and doing an amazing net zero project behind the Basalt High School on South Side. It just went out to the first lottery. People are ecstatic. We had a lot of participants, of course, because people are waiting in line for housing. So we're very excited about that. It's now, we've done the infrastructure. We're starting to come out of the ground, so it's really an exciting project. So Pitkin County has done a lot over the past 4 years. We're also in the process at looking at our housing mitigation fee to try and get some money back into our coffers for affordable housing projects. So we're working on that as we speak.
Question for both of you. What do you think about the proposal to split up APSHA so it is no longer jointly governed by the city of Aspen and Pitkin County? We'll start with you, Patti.
Well, that's a conversation that's ongoing, again, as we speak. We haven't really had the opportunity to actually sit down with the city with the information that we need in front of us and discuss it. There were some issues with a member of city council going out and trying to rally support, bringing it back, and the APSHA board being totally left out of the loop, which was totally inappropriate in my mind. Those people are volunteers. They put in a great deal of time and energy, and they should have been brought into that process from the get-go. I don't really know where it's going to go. I think Aspen needs changes. I think we all agree with that. There's a lot of issues that keep coming up daily. You know, it's a program that's been in effect for almost 40 years, way ahead of the time for anybody else in the country. And so it's time that we sit down and really reevaluate where we've been, where we are, and where we want to go with that program. So if it ends up at the end of the day that we split and go separate ways, then it's going to have to be a very well-informed decision.
Before we go to Rob on that question, Patti, I want to stick with you for a moment because, as you mentioned, you're the board chair currently, yes. And those relations between the county and the city have a lot to do with your leadership, and that's not the only time the county has felt like they were left out of the conversation. There's parking and traffic mitigation issues that the county felt caught off guard with. There's issues of approving or not approving county buildings or paying attention to a city recommendation for the size of the county building. What are you doing to keep up relations with the city, or do you feel that there could be some improvements currently?
Well, for the 16 years I've been in office, we've been working on a relationship with the city of Aspen. It's been ongoing, and we're right across the street from each other. Come on, guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. We've been working on it. So what I tried to do is, instead of having a meeting where we have PowerPoints and staff presentations and all that, let's have a meeting where we sit down, we have a meal, we have maybe a glass of beer and a glass of wine before, and we chat with each other, we talk to each other, we communicate on that level. I think that's the best way to get us back into some kind of a mutual agreement working relationship. It's been very difficult. It's really a tough one. And I'm really good friends with members of City Council, but we hold meetings with Snowmass Village that, you know, have been we've done really well. We meet with Basalt, we meet with Eagle County, Garfield County, Lake County, Gunnison County. You know, we meet across the board with these boards, and we meet on a regular basis with City Council, hoping that that would get a better flow of conversation. We're still working on it.
So, Rob, maybe you can tackle both those, starting off with the APSHA split and your thoughts on that, whether or not you think that that was inappropriate for a city council member to rally support, and just where you see the city-county relationship and what could be done.
Well, there's a disbalance of funds, you know, so that's why I think the city is coming in and saying, you know, let's take our cash out of the pot and not put it together. You know, them with their Wheeler Fund and a lot of the money that they have to put towards employee housing. The split is going to be a hard, you know, knot to unwind there. But this idea of a joint board that may even be an independent board, I'm not necessarily in favor of having elected officials on it, but maybe an elected board like a school board or something like that that makes more sense to govern this tremendous asset and very valuable asset. You know, I went to the joint city-county meeting that was about a month and a half ago when they were starting to talk about it. They spent 30 minutes talking about whether or not it should be a 5-person board or a 7-person board. And they're starting the decision-making process in the wrong place. What is this board going to accomplish? What types of decisions are they going to try to make? What type of people do we want to be on there? I don't go out and try to hire a chef or a general manager without trying to figure out who we want first, and then move down the road to figure out what type of board it's going to be. It was actually Patti in that meeting that said, well, we can't talk about it until we have another meeting. They meet every quarter, so it's 3 months later before they have that process. They need to have some leadership that comes to the table and says, what's the decision-making process here? What's the decision-making tree to get from point A to point Z with all of those decisions that need to be made in between to move forward?
I want to stay on housing one more moment from a conversation that's come up over and over again over the last year, which is perhaps downsizing or figuring out a way to get people into empty bedrooms that are within our affordable housing stock. You both live in affordable housing, both with a spare bedroom at this point. So I think I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on what to do in those situations, how to get those bedrooms filled, should they be, can new people buy in with an extra bedroom the way you guys have one?
Yeah, I think, shall I start?
Sure.
I think the Next Gen is brought up, the Next Gen group has brought up a big kind of initiative to try to kind of start some testing of this and that sort of stuff. There's some things that you need to understand about employee housing. First and foremost, people make the decision to get into employee housing just like they make the decision to get into a business. There's a contract, there's a deed, and it's signed by the city, and there's kind of legal stuff that both of those parties have to agree to and manage. And that contract cannot be changed unless both parties agree to it. These are just kind of basic aspects of contract. So in terms of employee housing, we have the option of creating more employee housing, incentivizing people to change their employee housing. So I think there should be a study done on what it takes to change people's deeds. There are a lot of deeds out there. Every year, the legal aspects of those deed restrictions change a little bit. So there's about hundreds probably of different deeds that have different requirements. It's, you know, one of the big arguments it says like getting seniors out. We're never going to get the seniors out. We don't want to get the seniors out. They have a deed restriction that they have to agree to change. So it's, don't ever think that any senior is going to get kicked out by anybody because they have the legal right to live up to that deed restriction. But we can incentivize those things. I think there should be a study done that says this is how much it costs to build a new unit, and this is how much it costs to change someone's deed restriction. Those deed restrictions could be much more, those changes could be much more affordable than building new units. So that would be the way to do it, to get those, incentivize the people that made the decision. When I bought my employee housing, it was far out of my reach. But I knew it was an asset that was valuable to me. So I sacrificed my quality of life to buy that and do that. So it's a trade-off, but that's the contract that I entered in with APSHA, and that's the contract that both parties have to honor.
Thank you. Patti, you have kids. How do we make sure the next generation gets the same opportunities that the original affordable housing generation got?
Well, first of all, you asked a question about extra bedrooms.
Yeah.
Well, in my 860 square feet, our extra bedroom is a closet. My daughter lived in it for many years. We bought our place having children, knowing we were going to have our children in that space. My children, I'm very fortunate, I'm very blessed, still live in the Valley. My daughter and her husband have been able to purchase in Glenwood Springs. They do the commute while my son-in-law does. My son and his wife are kind of roaming in the Carbondale area. It's difficult. It's difficult. That's why I'm looking at opportunities. What we did above the Basalt High School, it's perfect. And a young family with 2 children just want a 3-bedroom. That makes you really proud of an effort that you have worked really hard on. So we need to keep looking at those opportunities. When we as the county look to buy down free market units, we look at who we're going to house in those. Is it just going to be a single, or are we going to look at bringing our families who may be commuting from Newcastle, bringing them up into the Valley so their children can be here with their parents? So we keep that in mind at all times, because as part of a community, you need the diversity from the singles to the seniors to the young to the old and to the families with or without children. That's what makes our community so great, is the diversity of what I call, again, it's the minds, the bodies, and the spirits.
Thank you both. Moving on to the airport, which is sure to be among the biggest issues you will face in the next term if you're elected. Do we really need to move this runway to expand it to increase the landing weight from 100,000 to 150,000 pounds? Does that strike you as something that is actually necessary? And Patti?
I'll go first. I've been very involved in the airport for many, many years. When we did the extension of the airport years ago to keep what I call keep butts in seats, so that you didn't have to throw people off in the summer when it was too warm and you couldn't get the planes to take off with full payload. I think we're being there's some opportunities for creativity. We have a new consulting firm in, and we're starting to be a little more creative in what we might be able to do to keep local control, keep it so FAA doesn't have the strong arm at all times. And maybe the possibility of not changing the weight allowance at the airport, and how we can do that so that we can accommodate whatever the next generation wingspan may be, but we can look at the limitation of the big heavy jets that could come in if we change the weight limit. So we're really looking at that possibility, opportunity, before we make a decision. I need to be very clear, the Board of County Commissioners, so the public knows, has not made a decision on runway or terminal at this point in time. We're still in the process. We would like community members to come out and be involved in our community committees. I know they've been involved in many, many years. We appreciate the time they put in, but we have a whole new process starting, because it's a community airport. It is, it's a county airport, but it services the community. And we really want to have the community help us make the decisions of what's the right fit, the right weight, and the right wingspan.
Rob, can you speak to this and talk about how you would keep this project in line with community values?
So there's a lot of detail with the airport, and we could do a 2-hour show on it. I was on the Board of County Commissioners when we wrote the 2012 master plan for the airport, which was really the driving factor for the environmental assessment. The environmental assessment moved forward in 2015, right as I was coming off the board. I sat on the airport advisory board for that year, for 2015. It was a 3-year waiting process. That's what happened in the last 4 years, a 3-year waiting process for that environmental assessment to be approved and move forward through the FAA and the federal government. So the biggest thing to understand is that we operate under a modification to standard at the airport, that we are a certain class of an airport, and we have been granted a modification to standards for that. When we start to accept grant money, we have to look at whether or not they're going to still allow us to have those modifications to standards. It does not mean that any decisions have been made. I totally agree with Patti that the Board of County Commissioners will have a lot of control on that. We have just received a tremendous grant for an outreach, so that's where the big thing is going to be. That's going to be a year to an 18-month process of outreach to see what we need. We do know that our fleet is diminishing. We do know that the CRJ 700s by, they think, 2028 are probably no longer going to be in service anymore. There are future aircrafts and new aircrafts that we don't even know about that hopefully are more fuel efficient, quieter, and carry less and carry the same amount of passengers. Another issue is that if we do allow larger aircraft into our airport, the pilots, that there's a pilot's certification go up to 70, above 80 seats, you have a different classification of pilots. There's a tremendous shortage of pilots. That's what the airlines are most fearful about, and they will start to be competing against each other. This is an economic driver for our community. We need to make sure that it's a viable airport. And I think I was meeting with Bill Tomshish this morning, and the biggest economic driver will be during the off seasons, not during the seasons, because air traffic has not really increased during the heavy times. It's increasing during other times, which is an interesting statistic that I got from him this morning.
So we've just been told we have 2 minutes left, and we're going to count those seconds very slowly. Of course, there's a lot of topics we didn't get to, so I think it'd be best to end on values. So if someone's watching right now, they don't know either one of you, and they have their ballot in hand, what would they choose if to most align with their values? So Rob, can I start with you? I got my voter guide from the Pitkin County Republicans yesterday who said to vote for you. I think that label has made you've tried to distance yourself from that label. Can you speak to your Republican values, or if you classify yourself as a Republican, and within that same 60-second answer, what differentiates you from Patti?
Well, I'm a registered as an unaffiliated right now. I have been a Democrat. I actually worked for Bernie Sanders back in 94 and 96. He was mayor of Burlington while I was running restaurants there back in the late 80s. I have been a very fiscally responsible person in my life, and my background is finance and accounting, and I think that's where my Republican side of me comes. But I think liberally and with the environment, I'm very liberal on those issues. And I think I served that way when I was a member of the Board of County Commissioners. So that's where my values lies. But again, I think right now, everybody is talking about quality of life and what's diminished over the last 8 years.
Patti, what are your core values? How do people communicate with you about how that matches their own? Well,
I just had actually a Republican titled me as the people's people. In other words, I work for the people, I work hard for the people, I'm out where the people can see me, reach me, contact me, I get back to the people. I hold the community, I hold Pitkin County as a community that's amazing. We come here for the environment, but we rally. What happened at the Lake Christine fire, the rallying of regardless of jurisdictional boundaries, that's what this valley and this community is about. So I think people see me as as the person you can see on the street and talk to, the person that's at the grocery store, the person that's at the restaurants, the person that's at the sporting events. They see me as one of them. They don't see me as an employer. They don't see me as a business person. They see me as the people's people. And I value that. And I think they value the effort that I've put in over all the years that I've served Pitkin County, how hard I work, and that when asked a question, I answer it.
Real quick, you ask a question. You will have the opportunity to ask each other a question now. So maybe have a 30-second answer to that question.
I don't have a question for Rob because I think Rob's statements stand for themselves.
Okay, Rob, do you have a question for Patti?
Are the Broncos going to make it to the Super Bowl?
No, God, no. I was rooting for the Rockies there for a long time.
Well, let's move to your closing statements and try and keep them quick.
I'll start. I think that one of the most critical things in this election is that people actually get out and vote. That's the most frustrating thing that I've found over the years I've run for office. People say, oh, yeah, I'm going to vote for you. But you know what? They don't vote. And this ballot is difficult. It's 2 pages of very lengthy questions. So I don't want people to be frustrated. If you need help, please contact. You can call me at any time. I keep a sample ballot with me at all times in my pocket. I can go through the issues I've read the books. I can help people, not tell them how to vote, except maybe in one question, but advise them on the opportunities and what ballot questions mean. But people really need to get out and vote. That's critical. I also want to thank the community for their support in my campaign. I've had more people ask me for yard signs than I've ever had in my life. It's like I keep swapping them from one yard to another. People are really excited about my running for office again. People are really standing behind me, and I really appreciate all the support that I've received. And I really appreciate the support I'm receiving from my family, from my husband, Tommy, who's been standing on the street corner with the dog or multiple dogs, from my children, Trevor and Tracy, who are my co-chairs, and from my grandbabies that let me put their picture on my postcard, which is on 4,500 refrigerators as we speak. So, and I want to thank everyone for allowing tonight's event to go on, and thank you for being here with us.
Rob.
Well, yeah, I'd like to thank everybody out there in the community for being involved, and please go out and vote and tell other people to vote. I'm going to take a little opportunity in my closing statement to read some other people's words. And talking about the democratic value, I'm going to read the words from 3 Democratic past commissioners. First, the late Jack Hatfield, which supported me in the last election. The choice between Rob Ittner and Patti Clapper for me is an easy one. I served with both of them. There's no question that Rob Ittner has done a much better job representing the diverse Pitkin County than his opponent when she served. Rob has a vision, understanding, energy, focus, compassion, and the right values to continue to lead Pitkin County into the future. Bottom line, he's a fine commissioner, and as a result, I am pleased to support his candidacy. That was from 2014, but I just ran into Ruth today, and she must be still speaking to Jack because she said, we both support you in this election. Dorothea Ferris says, and this was from a letter that should be in the paper in the next couple of days, now more than ever our community grows to expand, as our community grows and our expanded needs must be addressed, we need to open the window to new approaches, new views and options, new ways of leading to involve the discussion and creative solutions. Rob Ittner is a candidate for the position of District 1 as a successful business owner in Aspen with background in finance and accounting. Rob brings an additional set of views and concepts, ideas to the BOCC. Again, a Democrat. The last is Michael Osley, who sent me an email. As former county commissioner who worked with both Rob Ittner and Patti Clapper, I have to endorse Rob Ittner as the most qualified candidate for county commissioner. Pitkin County's challenges are best faced by Rob Ittner's forward attitude and clear analytical mind as a community builder. So those are 3 Democrats that served as county commissioner and very widely respected by the community, all of which served with Patti and 2 of which served with me.
We're out of time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for joining us. Thanks to Rob Ittner and Patti Clapper. Thanks to Grassroots TV. Please stay tuned because in a few minutes we will be joined by Eagle County Commissioner candidates Jeannie McQueenie and Jackie Cartier. And please remember that ballots are arriving this week. They should already be in your mailbox. In-person early voting starts on Monday, and Election Day is November 6th.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.